Okay. Let me test my audio because I tend to have issues with that before I greet you. Let's see. Alright, it's perfect. You can hear me. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hope you have had a great week so far. I have had a week. Neither great nor bad. Just a week. Full disclosure. I had a long day, staring at a computer screen, making maps, and editing reports. And I'm mentally exhausted. But I still wanted to come on and do this because last week I didn't, and I felt really, really guilty. I don't know why. I've said this before. Why I would feel guilty about not streaming. I don't know. But I do. So I'm streaming now. Yes, follow me on Twitter. I have a Discord. I do link all of my sources, so every article I go through on the stream, I do link there. So if you want to follow up or try to find the article sources, then it's easy link for you. Then there's what else is there? I was gonna say something else. What was I gonna say? Yes, so as you can tell, I'm a little mentally tired. So please be forgiving, not judgmental if I say something stupid, or if I just can't speak at all, like I did just there. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I need to minimize myself. I should probably make a new thing with this instead of having to. There we go. And you can see. Like magic. Alright. Also, happy October, everybody! I don't know about you guys, but I love October. I love Halloween. It is the best holiday. It is so joyous. There's so much energy in the air. Kids returned back to school. They're seeing their friends. They're all happy. They're energized. It's not so hot, so you're not dying. I don't know if any of you live in a hot climate, but it sucks during the summer. But then fall and winter arrives, and it's so nice. Then Halloween, which what is there to hate about Halloween? It's just a marvelous time. You can trick or treat. You can just hang with friends. You could drink. You could watch movies. I sort of celebrate it through the whole month, starting with movies to get myself into the Halloween spirit. And then Halloween night happens, and sadly, I am too old to trick or treat, but I can hand out candy. And I am actually in a house this year instead of an apartment, so I can actually hand out candy again, which is going to be so lovely. I'm going to be spending Halloween night watching some of my favorite Halloween movies / horror movies and cooking. Because what is a holiday without cooking? You gotta have your best fall goods baked and handing out candy. So I really hope I get trick-or-treaters this year. I really hope, because that would make my day to see some little kid dressed up. And not a teen who half-asses it because they have a hoodie with some insignia on it. I mean an actual kid that dresses up. How can you not like that? They just come and they're all terrified because this is new and they don't know you and they're ringing a doorbell of a stranger and it's such a new experience and they're terrified and it's amazing and you're just nice and you give them candy. It's wonderful. There was this one year where he had to have been like 2 or something, and his dad was taking him around and he was dressed like a little lion. Cutest little kid. Oh. And he was so afraid to come up to our door. He was literally shaking, holding his little bag like this and shaking. And he couldn't do it. And he kept looking back at his dad. And his dad finally got up and walked over and helped him. And it was so adorable. A little cowardly lion. Anyways. Let's get started with the actual content instead of me just rambling on about Halloween. First thing is an announcement that I found by the Institute of Human Origins, New York area friends. So anybody who is in the area or can fly or drive freely because you got the disposable income, they are having a lecture with Ian Tattersall. And if you don't know that name, he is a very big name. I've read many of his papers and cited many of them. The Origins of Modern Human Cognition, November 3rd in NYC, a fundraiser for scholarships, research, and outreach. So that's really cool. It is from 5:30 to 8:30 in New York City at the Harmony Club. Harmony Club. So yes, check that out if you are local. I am not, sadly. Otherwise, I totally would go. Next, another Twitter post. The documentation of stone artifacts is one of the greater challenges in archaeological drawing. As an illustrator, you have to know exactly how the stone was originally processed. So sometimes you have to draw the lithic material you find, especially if it's a tool. And it's very detailed. This person did an amazing job, honestly. I can't zoom in. So you really want to capture all the hard edges and then the shading and waves that can be produced when a flake is taken off are really important because it shows where the flake was hit to be taken off. So you have kind of a ripple effect going on here. That's really common. That's what happens when you're flint knapping. So it was likely struck probably over here and taken off. When it's struck, it creates a percussion wave through the stone, which is interesting. So you can actually completely analyze how a tool was created. And if you're lucky enough to have the tool with the flakes around it, say the individual broke the tool and said screw it and just left it in the pile of flakes, you might be able to actually kind of re-put things together if you can. That's really just something that modern day flint knappers do. It really helps study and how these tools were made and what kind of cognitive processes the individual would have had to go through in order to create that tool. To make a lithic artifact like this, you have to understand the stone and the physics in it and what's going to happen when you strike it here with this certain object at this angle. Because flint knappers tend to use multiple tools, at least ones I've met. They use different types of rocks, harder to softer, and then they will use a like deer antler or something for microflaking, much softer, but great for that need. Yeah, so very interesting, and this is kind of something that you would draw, very detailed. You got to take your time with it. I've had to draw something like this before. I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but I do enjoy it. It's all about trying, you know? You may not be good, but you gotta try. Just take your time. It's okay. All right. Intraoral scanner is calibrated for color each week. We are impressed with the results for both bone and teeth. Calculus and tertiary dentine are visible. It is even possible to differentiate postmortem and antemortem fractures. So they're just doing some scanning and they're able to get a lot of information. That's actually really cool. That's amazing. The detail that they're getting from these scans. Discoloration and everything. Amazing. Oh, look, some dentine. Interesting. So yeah, there's that. Moving on. Observing many researchers using the same data and hypothesis reveals a hidden universe of uncertainty. Will different researchers, we'll read the abstract. This study explores how researchers' analytical choices affect the reliability of scientific findings. Most discussions of reliability problems in science focus on systematic biases. We broaden the lens to emphasize the idiosyncrasy of conscious and unconscious decisions that researchers make during data analysis. We coordinated 161 researchers in 73 research teams and observed their research decisions as they used the same data to independently test the same prominent social science hypothesis. Ooh, social science. Yeah, that's not generally numbers. So, yes. We coordinated, got that. The greater immigration reduces support for social policies among the public. In this typical case of social science research, research teams supported both widely diverging numerical findings and substantive conclusions despite identical start conditions. Researchers' expertise, prior beliefs, and expectations barely predict the wide variation in research outcomes. Ooh. Qualitative coding of all identifiable decisions in each team's workflow. This reveals a universe of uncertainty that remains hidden when considering a single study in isolation. The idiosyncratic, yeah, don't do that. That's, you've gotta keep researching it, and that's like the number one thing with science is it has to be repeatable. And yeah, that's why a lot of things kind of seem a little redundant, but that there's a reason for it. And this is the reason. The idiosyncratic nature of how researchers' results and conclusions varied is a previously underappreciated explanation for why many scientific hypotheses remain contested. These results call for greater epistemic humility and clarity in reporting scientific findings. You should be as clear as possible. When you're writing something, you gotta write like you're writing to someone who don't know shit. You gotta explain everything. That's yeah. And your fellow colleague expert, they're gonna be like, why are you explaining all of this? This sucks. I don't want to reread this. I know this. But you have to state everything and where you're coming from and why you got this and every little detail. Yes. It sucks. What data? Bias focused perspective implicitly assumes that reducing perverse incentives to generate surprising and sleek results would instead lead researchers to generate valid conclusions. This may be too optimistic, while removing these barriers leads researchers away from systematically taking invalid or biased analytical paths. This alone does not guarantee validity and reliability For reasons less nefarious, researchers can disperse in different directions in what Gelman and Loken call a garden of forking paths in analytical decision making. The principal investigators coordinated a group of blah blah. We read that our entire reproducible workflow for this study is available online in our project repository. Ooh, nice. I like it. Across different networks. So we got sociologists, political scientists, economists, communication people, interdisciplinary, well, that's okay, and methods-focused degree backgrounds. Data for the International Social Survey Program, a long-running, large-scale, cross-nationally comparative survey of political and economic attitudes used in over 10,000 published studies. 6-question module on the role of government in providing different social policies, such as old age, labor market, and healthcare provisions. This 6-question module is also the source of the data used by David Brady and Ryan Finnegan. And one of the most investigations of the substantive hypothesis participants were instructed to test. The PIs also provided yearly indicator data for countries on immigrant stock as a percentage of the population and on flow as a net change in stock, taken from the World Bank, the United Nations, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Relevant ISSP and immigration data were available for 31 mostly rich and some middle-income countries. There were up to 5 survey waves from 1985 to 1990, 1996, 2006, and 2016, all provided data from publicly available sources. To remove potential biases incentives, all researchers from the teams that completed the study were ensured co-authorship on the final paper, regardless of their results. Because the participants themselves were researchers and all tasks assigned to them were standard research practices theoretically worthy of co-authorship. Institutional review prior to conducting this study was not necessary. The researchers participated in surveys to measure expertise and study relevant beliefs and attitudes before and during the research process. Okay. Ooh. What is this? Average marginal effect. Models ordered by aim, which is average marginal effect. Weighted percent of distribution. 95% of confidence interval includes 0. There's a lot here. Well, discussion, implications, limitations, no conclusion. Okay, well, we're moving on. Cannibalism and burial in the late Upper Paleolithic, combining archaeological and genetic evidence. The Magdalenian, which is approximately 23.5 to 13.5 thousand years before present, is one of the 2 major techno-complexes identified in Europe during the late Upper Paleolithic and is notable for its complex worked bone and lithic industries, and both artistic and ritualistic behaviors. Magdalenian funerary behaviors, however, remain enigmatic, with human assemblages often represented by scattered and fragmented remains showing evidence of post-mortem manipulation that has been associated with cannibalism. Ooh. To best clarify any pattern of funerary behavior during the Magdalenian, an exhaustive literature review was performed to identify Magdalenian sites that have delivered human remains. Of the 59 sites identified, it was possible to ascertain funerary behavior at 25 of those sites, with 10 deposits attributed to primary burial. It's not many. 13 showing evidence of anthropic modification indicative of cannibalism. The two sites combining both behaviors, given the similarities of anthropic modifications observed on the cut-marked and cannibalized human remains across sites. The high frequency and geographic distribution of this practice and the association in some of the sites of cannibalism with the ritualistic manipulation of human remains. It is proposed that cannibalism during the Magdalenian was practiced as a form of funerary behavior rather than for necessary or as gastronomic cannibalism. Wait, what? Given the similarities of the anthropic modifications observed on the cut, mark, and cannibalized human remains across sites, the high frequency and geographic distribution of this. Okay, so they're saying there were similarities in these modifications and the cut marks, so therefore they think it was more of a ritualistic burial practice rather than just survival. Funerary cannibalism appears in greater abundance during the Middle Magdalenian, whilst primary burials are more common during the Upper and Terminal Magdalenian. Further, although genetic data are limited, we identify a relationship between funerary behavior and genetic ancestry. With all cannibalism, individuals showing ancestry associated with the Goyet Q2 cluster, indicative of Magdalenian human groups, whilst sequenced individuals found in a primary burial context show a genetic affinity with the Epigravitian, which is a Villabruna associated ancestry, the other major technocomplex of the period. We hypothesize that cannibalism is a funerary behavior indicative of Goyet Q2 associated Magdalenian populations, and that differences in funerary behaviors during the Magdalenian reflect distinct genetic ancestries indicative of known population movements during the terminal Upper Paleolithic. Or genetic study has been performed. The interpretation must be tempered. However, given that limited taphonomic or genetic study has been performed at the majority of Magdalenian sites, and thus to fully clarify the funerary behaviors of Magdalenian groups, additionally focus on understudied Magdalenian assemblages need to be established. Classic. Hey, Drewski, how's it going? We're talking about cannibalism. So welcome. Let's see. Exhaustive literature search has been carried out to collate as many available information. Yeah, it's still not a lot. So we got it in Belgium. I wonder why it's like smushed. It sucks. Belgium, Czechia, France, 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 France. God damn, these are all France. Germany. Lots of Germany. Poland. Some Portugal, getting a little different. Russia and Spain. Okay. The UK. Nice. So we got primary burial, cannibalism, primary burial, and cannibalism, and no interpretation. It's a lot of black dots. Right here, 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 here. Looks like there's 2 in this area. Looks like cannibalism. We got it here and here. Not really down in Spain and Portugal. Oh, almost in Wales. A lot up in here, which, and then kind of like isolated areas really that aren't quite connected to flatter plains. So that's important. Do, do, do. So the dates. For present. I don't like BP. And I don't like it because BP present is 1950. We're coming up on 100 years after that. Like it seems far away, but it's really not going to be. And saying BP, then you have to add, and it's just kind of a silly one. I don't think it's great, honestly. And our years are still based off of the BC and AD. Like, unless we completely overhauled our calendar system, I think the best route is just to say how many years ago. And that's going to change. So if I decided to drag up an article from 100 years ago, I'd have to mentally be like, okay, they say years ago, but this was written 100 years. I don't know. BP's silly. I think it's silly. I guess you end up doing math either way. Okay. Combined evidence of primary burial and post-mortem manipulation of human remains. See, post-mortem manipulation could be a lot of things. Cut, marked, and modified human remains have been described solely at 13 Magdalenian sites and at 2 sites alongside evidence of primary burials. These sites are found across the range of Magdalenian culture, but are particularly abundant in southern France and the Swabian Jura region of southern Germany. Okay. For 10 assemblages, previous work have highlighted how human remains are cut, marked, and purposefully broken to extract bone marrow. In 2 cases, there is also evidence of human chewing marks at on the human remains. Ooh. The detailed taphonomic analysis of the anthropic modifications observed at these 10 sites is consistent with the extraction of nutrients, and therefore these sites have been interpreted as causes of cannibalism. For 3 assemblages, the presence of few cut-marked bones and the absence of percussion damage or human chewing marks make the interpretation of cannibalism less certain, with modifications having been alternatively associated with cannibalism or secondary burial, where the active defleshing of the remains is proposed but without the consumption of any soft tissue. The active defleshing of the... What? Presence of few cut marks and bones, presence of percussion damage or human chewing marks make the interpretation of cannibalism less certain, with modifications having been alternatively associated with cannibalism or secondary burial, where the active defleshing of the remains is proposed but without the consumption of any soft tissue. Okay. Among the assemblages where post-mortem modifications of remains have been convincingly attributed to cannibalism, the minimum number of individuals represented varies but is consistent with the deposition of multiple individuals, with at least 24 individuals represented at La Placard, 9 individuals at La Marche, and 6 at Gauze Cave and Corbett Cave. When the age at time of death is considered, evidence of these sites suggests that adults, adolescents, and juveniles were cannibalized and disposed of in a similar manner, in some cases mixed with faunal remains. Wonder if it, like, have they looked into what the environment was going on during that time and cross-reference that? Cranial fragments are often overrepresented at cannibal sites, and there are at least 6 sites where the postmortem manipulation of the cranial vaults has been associated with the manufacture of skull caps. At these sites, the distribution of cut marks and the breakage pattern of the crania indicate that any soft tissue was initially cut off before controlled removal of the facial bones and the breakage of the cranial case along a sub-horizontal plane. Okay. The consistency in the way skulls were manipulated and modified suggests a similar ritualistic behavior at these sites. At Isturitz, incisions on one of the skull cup do not appear to be consistent with traces left by scalping and have been interpreted as possible artistic engraving. Similarly, at Go's Cave, a series of zigzag incisions found on a human radius, the radius is in the form, that lack any utilitarian purpose have been interpreted as an artistic representation. Of the 15 distinct depositions where cut-marked human remains and cannibalism were identified, 13 have been directly dated, with the majority dating to the Middle Magdalenian period. One site is attributed to the Lower Magdalenian period. The deposit at Mashuka Cave to the Lower and Middle Magdalenian transition, and the deposition at El Castillo Cave is attributed to the upper or terminal phase of the Magdalenian. So you are much likely to get cannibalism with the Goyet Q2. Two distinct funerary practices. That's what it seems like. Primary burial is seen across geographically and temporal disparate human societies and is considered a clear example of complex funerary behavior. Anthropophagy or cannibalism, the eating of individuals, or that's kind of a late time. That is late to be defining this. You should have defined this way at the beginning. Definitions come first before you start using the terms. On the contrary, has been more often rejected or discredited as the expression of a mortuary behavior. Indeed, it has been suggested that Magdalenian funerary rites are archaeologically invisible based on the assumption that primary burials are the main expression of mortuary practice. However, Salah and Conard suggest that the almost complete lack of formal burials in the Swabian Jura in South Germany. Ooh, it was right there. There was a friggin' timeline here. Yeah. Does it show it? Just red, cannibalism, and the presence of cut-marked human remains. Blue, primary burial. No. No, it didn't. Never mind. What was I? I was in here. It is, however, undeniable that the frequency of cannibalistic cases among the Magdalenian sites exceeds any incidence of this behavior among earlier or later hominid groups, and suggests that mortuary cannibalism was a method Magdalenian people used to dispose of their deceased. One of the strongest arguments for cannibalism as a funerary practice comes from its recurrent appearance within a historical context as a widespread activity over time and an established custom for the group involved. There is much more, but I think I should probably move on. So, nice. Got some funding. conceived the project, performed the exhaustive literature review, integrated the biomolecular data, visualized all data, and wrote the paper. Sylvia Bello conceived the project, performed the initial chronicling of sites, wrote the paper, and secured funding for the project. The authors declare that they have no known competing financial interests. I'd like to thank the Khalifa Foundation. Nice. Anyways, I will definitely be linking this in the Discord. If you want to read the full thing, it's all here. That's quite a bit. Bam. Moving on. The encounter between Neanderthals and sapiens as told by their genomes. Summary. About 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals, who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years in the western part of the Eurasian continent, gave way to Homo sapiens, who had arrived from Africa. This replacement was not sudden, and the two species coexisted for a few millennia, resulting in the integration of a Neanderthal DNA into the genomes of sapiens. Researchers have analyzed the distribution of the portion of DNA inherited from Neanderthals in the genomes of humans. Over the last 40,000 years, these statistical analyses revealed subtle variations in time and geographic space. Interesting. Okay. I'm just doing the summary here. I need to move on. But yes. Also, it says coexisted. They coexisted in the same, like, geographic areas, but they didn't actually, a lot of times, what we're finding is they didn't, like, live in the same village. You can find like layers. So the stratigraphy showing Neanderthal, and then Homo sapien, and then Neanderthal, and then Homo sapien. Like in a cave, you can see that the usage was switching out. It wasn't likely them commingling quite like that usually. Also, if we did see like them living in the same village or something, being a part of the same tribe, you would see a lot of the you would see multi-species burial sites. You might see the similarity of tools utilized, because they would have traded technology in that way. You would have seen similar eating patterns, so Neanderthals tend to stick to the large game, whereas Homo sapien kind of utilized both large and small game. But you don't really see that, which is how we're able to define these layers. Although, it would be really cool, and maybe we're just interpreting our data wrong. I don't know, but if they transferred technology, it would have been awesome. 2 million years ago, this Homo erectus lived in the high life. Oh, they lived the high life. Dating of a child's fossilized jaw and teeth suggests our relatives lived at altitudes earlier than once thought. Archaeologists are rewriting the history of an early human child whose fossilized jaw and impacted teeth were discovered more than 40,000 years ago in the Ethiopian highlands. Scientists used high-tech imaging to reveal the early humans, apparently Homo erectus, inhabited this high-altitude plateau 2 million years ago. Their work provides more evidence that even earlier in our evolutionary journey, our Homo ancestors weren't confined to warm African lowlands. Instead, they took advantage of a variety of diverse environments, a precursor of their abilities to subsequently spread out across the prehistoric world. Well, of course. Do you really think they stuck to one type of environment and then all of a sudden conquered the world? No. They would have gone in all kinds of environments within their local area, uh, within like country area, continent area, before they go off all over. I mean, that makes sense. They analyzed the teeth and jaw as never before. So dramatic. And they published their findings Thursday in Science. They compared the teeth to those of other early Homo species and suggest that the child was H. erectus. The group likely made and used the abundant stone tools of the Oldowan technology found with the fossil. The authors say, as well as the more advanced Acheulean tools also found in the area. How close is that area? Because Oldowan and Acheulean are quite different. From nearly the same time period, this suggests the authors theorized that these early Highlanders adapted quickly to high altitude environment. Maybe they just had that one Houdini that like made it so much more sophisticated. I don't know if you guys know of him. I believe he was an orangutan. Houdini lived in a zoo, and he was known for escaping his cage. He didn't like to be in it. He wanted to go walk around with the people, and he was fine. Like, he never hurt anybody or anything. No one really ever got too afraid. He would just be walking around the zoo, and his handlers had a hard time keeping him in the cage. Every time they would change the locks or however the opening worked, he figured it out. He would even like hide wires in his gum to be able to pick the lock. He was smart, and he taught. So they thought maybe he was just lonely, and they gave him. They brought in two females, I believe, to keep him company, and he taught them how to do it. And then I believe him and the females taught their children how to escape as well, although they weren't as clever as Houdini was. They were able to basically just mimic what Houdini had taught them rather than coming up with their own, which is interesting. Very interesting. Moving on. Extinct ape gets a facelift 12 million years later. A new study has reconstructed the well-preserved but damaged skull of a great ape species that lived about 12 million years ago. The species, Pierolopithecus, catalonicus, may be crucial to understanding great ape and human evolution. A species from northeastern Spain, first described in 2004, was one of the diverse groups of now extinct ape species that lived in Europe around 15 to 7 million years ago. The species is key to understanding the mosaic nature of hominid, great ape, and human evolution, because it is known for a cranium and partial skeleton of the same individual, a rarity in the fossil record. Cool. So they're able to kind of reconstruct a skull a little bit. Not easy to do. Dental health in Roman dogs, a pilot study using standardized examination methods. So abstract. The objective is to utilize standardized clinical veterinary methods to analyze dental health in a series of Roman dog maxillae and mandibles. Maxillae are the upper jaw. This is all your maxilla. And the mandible is the jaw. 28 skulls of juvenile and adult dogs from 3 archaeological sites in Switzerland and Germany dating to the Roman period. Standardized examination was carried out, which included metric radiographic assessment to diagnose oral pathology and estimate age at death. In one case, CT analysis was undertaken. The estimated average age at death was between 3 and 4 years old. Tooth fracture, periodontal disease, the presence of non-vital teeth, and brachiocephalic skull form were found in the sample. Tooth resorption was unexpectedly noted. Oh, interesting. The study, they lost a tooth and they survived through it. It closed up. The study provides valuable insights into the study provides valuable insights into the dental health of dogs in the Roman era. Compared to modern dogs, Roman dogs examined in this study appear to have a shorter lifespan, but display a high rate of pathological dental disease. While disease patterns were very similar to those of modern dogs, dogs with pronounced brachiocephalic features were found. The pilot study is the first to use standardized clinical examination and recording techniques to assess dental health in dogs from archaeological contexts. It provides insights into the dental health of Roman era dogs and offers data upon which cross-population studies can be initiated. The sample size and geographic location of the archaeological sites were limited. And then, of course, further research. Alright, guys. I'm gonna cut it short today. Like I said earlier, I'm pretty mentally exhausted, and I'm glad I got on. I needed this. This was fun. Anyways, check out my Discord. I post all of my sources in there, so if you ever want to follow up or read the article for yourself, it's right there. Follow me on Twitter. I do kind of post things sometimes, mainly bringing other stuff to the attention of any watchers I have. Yeah, science Twitter is pretty active. It's nice to see people within my own field. I've managed to make connections that way, which is good. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Take care, and see you later.